I'm gonna skip any more pleasantries. I'm gonna hop into Patriots because we are just a couple days removed from the Patriots season opener. Before we get into any actual football stuff, though, I want to talk about Stefon Diggs. He had an interesting interaction with the media this week at practice. I thought it was it was some places framed it as an apology. Some places framed it as a confrontation, or not
Definitely
really.
not that.
Yeah. Some places framed it as just like a clearing the air.
Yeah.
And the bulk of it was that he was perhaps in an offhand manner described as like a pain in the ass this summer by some of a couple in particular of the Patriots media. I believe it was Tom Curran, right, and Phil Perry. Um,
Mhm.
and he just kind of said, "Hey, I don't want it to be that. I don't want that to be part of our relationship this season when we'll hopefully be working together quite a bit." Um, Sean, I guess I'll start with you. What was your feelings watching that, and kind of what were your takeaways watching the reaction to it?
Yeah. So I was down there yesterday, and he like walks in the media workroom, and just the way I think his first sentence was like, I want to have a conversation. And I thought I'm like, oh, like this is where is this going? Um, but I think overall reaction, I would call it like almost a mutual apology. He was the first one to say I apologize, and then both Tom and Phil kind of, had their minute as well, and they did the same thing. And essentially, I think what Tom said was something, we tried to put the toothpaste back in the tube, but once the toothpaste was out of the tube, it's gaining steam and it's kind of somewhat going viral, I would say. So it was too late, but I thought it was like kind of a nice mutual respect sort of thing. I mean, he addressed something head on. Um, and and I was actually watching Phil on NBC Sports Boston last night, and Phil had mentioned that he tried to approach Stefon Diggs. I think it was a few times over the last few weeks, and he tried to kind of approach him and just one on one say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said this. This was purely speculative, and that sort of thing. And Stefon Diggs kind of he acknowledged it in the moment, but I think the way Phil said is he's like, we'll talk about it next week or something like that. Um, and I think this was kind of like Stefon Diggs having his own platform to do this, to like, kind of, I didn't like what you said about me on your platform, so now I'm gonna kind of use my platform and do that because, if he was to have a one-on-one in the locker room, which I think happens quite a bit, I think those sorts of things, it's a push and pull sort of relationship with the media, I think sometimes, and that would be not swept under the rug, but he wouldn't really get his say in it. He really wouldn't get to address it publicly. So I actually thought it was like a nice clearing of the air, I guess. I think it was, it was certainly respectful. And I think it was kind of mature on his part to just address it.
I think it says a lot about the way Sean and I see the world that Sean thought it was a nice clearing of the air. And I just thought it was like one of the more bizarre interactions I've seen between an assembled media and a
The
quote
cynic
unquote
and the
star
sentiment. Yeah.
player who hasn't played a single meaningful second of action for the team. Like I I get what Diggs was trying to do, and for that I respect. I'm guessing it wasn't his doing necessarily,
Yeah.
but it's like they realize they can't keep him from the media all season long, but he's going out there and it might be a little bit uncomfortable. So like go get out in front of this, try to, basically I think Diggs and the Patriots get credit for, basically taking charge of the conversation and the narrative. I think by the way that it played out, I think Diggs comes away looking not better because I don't think there's a scoreboard necessarily, but I think he played that entire game on his turf. He was the home field for lack of a better term, and I think that is kind of like the
Hmm.
whole thing with Phil, where Phil wanted to apologize to him in private, and now Phil basically has to apologize to him in front of everyone, which is just quite a move by Diggs in that regard. I don't know if that was the intended consequence or not, but I just thought like I thought he said some constructive things in his statement, and then Phil and Curran both like just being like, "I'm sorry, I don't actually have a question. I'm sorry too," was wildly not uncomfortable, but just strange and
Yeah.
bizarre. And that part of it I thought was unique. Um, in hindsight, like I get, like I said, I give Diggs credit for trying to take that, but I do wonder if maybe he made it a slightly bigger story by trying to bury it. I don't think this thing's gonna linger because they did it, but this is like I had forgotten or I didn't realize that this was an issue until he, brought it up. But um I do think like probably big picture, like they've reset the scoreboard now and like it goes back to normal. But for one day, I thought it was a very just a bizarre set of circumstances and a way to kind of go about business for all involved.
Did you
I
have
also
I
something
and
else to say, Sean?
yeah,
I was
Sean.
just
I,
gonna
I just think it's like weird that we all like it's not that serious, guys.
yeah,
Is
That
yeah,
like the
that's
way I
exactly
kind
what
Go
I
of
was
ahead,
gonna
Sean.
say.
That's
yeah.
kind of my
I was gonna say the
remark.
same thing. I mean, it was the quote was being a pain in the posterior is the quote that it was, and one, I don't think that's that bad, and also kind of to Phil's credit, or in backing him up or supporting his point a little bit, that was at a time where it was at this point close to a month ago, a few weeks ago, and there were kind of some things that were like a little funky about the whole thing. I mean, the Rossini thing that Diggs was the one that left that open to interpretation. There's no doubt about it. He was kind of side eyeing and smiling and everything, but he flat out said, I don't know if I'm going to be ready for week one. There was also Todd Downing, the receivers coach. He said something about Diggs. I think it was like the day or two before they left for Minnesota. And it was something along the lines of like, we just want him to focus on what he can control and like, be in the right spots and like those sorts of things. And I think that was, if you want to, read between the lines, there was something to that at the time too. And then, Vrabel was asked about Diggs' comment to Rossini, and it was kind of, I mean, it was a funny back and forth, like a little bit of a tiff that was also with Phil, who asked a question, but it was Vrabel seemed irritated that he had to answer the question, and to me, I think it was a perfectly fair question to be like, "Hey, your receiver just said he might not be available for Week 1. Are you seeing anything? Is there any setback? Is it, have you seen anything that might make that kind of true?" So that's why the pain in the posterior quote came about, and I just think like it's a pretty harmless sort of quote. I mean, if you're going to get used to sports media in Boston, there's going to be a lot worse than that, in my opinion.
Also, like, did we just forget that Memorial Day weekend happened too? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, yeah, if I'm Steph Diggs, I'll keep on talking about Phil Perry and Tommy Curran all day if it means, we further memory hole like the pink
yeah.
powder stuff. Like, so like that's where I do, if I'm Phil, I'm like, yeah, man, you like all you've done has been a distraction since you got
Yeah.
here. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to get in the way of any major progress for this football team, at least not yet. But like, dude, you got signed in March. 2 months later, you were causing a stir, and now you're doing it
Yeah.
again. And like, yeah. And I also would probably be a little bit annoyed if I were a reporter, being like, we could have squashed this a lot earlier if you just talked to us instead of
Hmm.
going
Hmm.
silent for the entire summer. So it's just a weird thing. But again, for them to be like, yeah, man, I just want to say I'm sorry, my bad. Like, I mean, they didn't like, you know, rob the guy or anything like that. Yeah, come on. It's not. We're all gonna get. It's okay.
So yeah, I mean, kind of to your point about it, what him apologizing for not being a biggest deal. The thing he apologized for almost struck me as like you plead guilty to a lesser crime in
Yeah.
order to get off from the greater one. Like he apologized for the pain in the ass, the Rossini sort of situation, in order to, in a way, kind of deflect or forget about
Yeah.
the Memorial
Yeah.
Day incident. And so that's why, like, halfway through it, I was like, wait, what's he apologizing for? Oh, he's not apologizing for what I thought he was going to apologize for, and I just think that was kind of yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, it struck me as like, Your Honor, my client. He acknowledges the petty larceny in exchange for getting off of the murder one.
I was gonna make a local crime joke, but I don't really need the fanatics of a certain high
Oh,
profile
jeez.
defendant all up in my business. But it's similar to that. I think yeah,
I
maybe
mean,
getting a DUI charge as opposed to murder or something like that. I don't know.
is there a chance to like uh, I think he's been mature and I think he's been nice to the media since he's arrived, but is there a chance that in 3 months or whatever time, like we are looking at this like, maybe there was something to that thought? Because I think there's I don't know, just the track record and everything like that. There was a reason for that comment
So
for Phil.
my yeah, I mean, so the sense that I've always gotten about Stefon Diggs, and this is just obviously watching him from a very far distance. Like I've never like I'm not a huge Minnesota Vikings fan, so like I haven't followed him really closely. But my impression of him has always been he's pretty good with the media. He's
Hmm.
pretty good in the receivers room. Like he seems to be pretty good in that way. He's obviously productive on the field, but he can be kind of a dink sometimes. Like that's always been my observation for him from afar. Like he's good, on field and off field for the most part, but a couple times a year there's things that he'll do or say, and you're like, bro, like what's going on here? And
Hmm.
I mean, he's not that's not unique among professional athletes, especially wide receivers. So I don't know. It's always struck me as something that's like it's not that big a deal. It's like it's just something that you deal with in order to get production from that position.
Yeah, it feels like a guy who starts pretty well and then more or less wears
Hmm.
out his welcome.
Fair.
And like he kind of got out of Houston, it feels like before he had a chance to wear out his welcome because like everybody in Houston speaks glowingly of him, but obviously Minnesota and Buffalo, you know, they started well and then it kind of fizzled out and he got, had issues with everybody seemingly involved. And that's why like I think as a maybe as a short-term play on a team that uh has no receivers really, he makes sense because like
Hmm.
he's going to be the guy. He got his money for starters, and he's going to be the guy. It's not like he's who's going to take targets from him. Who's who what is he going to have to go to Drake May to complain about? It's hard to see that happening at least in the first year or two. And yeah, so I think and I do think there's a lot of positive feedback about him especially within his position group, where I think he
Hmm.
does well with young receivers and is good. He's smart and like I think he'll bring younger guys along, and maybe that's part of the reason they felt like they wanted to or had no problems getting rid of Kendrick Bourne too. Right? Is it's like let's clear the path for this guy to lead this group, and take it from there. Whether that's the same case in 3 years from now, especially if they find a stud receiver either in this draft class or next year, who's to say? But I think that's a risk that you're willing to take for a team that's completely
Yeah.
devoid of talent and needs somebody to catch a football.